After my surgery, my wife and kids promised to help me recover. Instead, they went on family vacation with my wife's Lovar and left me alone without food or medication. When I called my wife, she said, "Don't guilt trip me, we're on vacation, not your servants." I just whispered, "Thanks for showing me who you really are." 2 weeks later, I made a decision they didn't see coming. My spoiled kids bombarded me with 42 messages. "Please talk to us, we're begging." Chapter 1, The Promise. The anesthesia wore off slowly like a fog lifting from a winter morning. I blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights of the recovery room. My mouth cotton dry and my thoughts scattered. Dr. Landry's face swam into view. His expression professional but pleased. "Surgery went perfectly, Mr. Delacroix," he said, checking my vitals. "The spinal fusion was successful, but recovery will be challenging. You'll need consistent help for at least 6 weeks. I nodded, wincing at the movement. At 48, I wasn't bouncing back from injuries like I used to. The construction accident 3 months ago had shattered 2 vertebrae, and after exhausting less invasive options, surgery became inevitable. My wife Melanie's face appeared next, her blonde hair perfectly styled even for a hospital visit. She smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. After 23 years of marriage, I could read every micro-expression on her face. Something was off. "Don't worry, babe," she said, squeezing my hand. "We'll take care of everything." Our children, Preston and Bailey, stood awkwardly behind their mother. Preston, 22, and fresh out of the business school I'd paid for, fidgeted with his phone. Bailey, 19 and home from her sophomore year at UCLA, at least managed a smile that seemed genuine. "Yeah, Dad," Bailey said. "We've got all arranged. The whole family will help," Melanie added. "The doctor says you'll need supervision, help with Medicat ion, bathing, everything. We've cleared our schedules." I should have noticed the glance that passed between them. Fleeting, but loaded with something I was too drugged to interpret. Instead, I felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," I rasped. "I know this isn't how any of you wanted to spend your summer." Before my accident, I'd been Raymond Delacroix, the unstoppable force behind Delacroix Construction. I'd built the company from nothing after escaping my father's shadow. Hank Delacroix had been a mean drunk who taught me only what not to become. I worked my way up from day laborer to foreman, saved every penny, and started my own business at 25. Now we handled major commercial projects across 3 states. I'd fought for everything I had, and I'd given my family everything I never had growing up: stability, luxury, opportunity. I'd missed dinners and weekends to build something lasting for them. Now, for the first time, I needed them. The nurse provided detailed instructions. Dr. Landry explained to my family. "Mr. Delacroix will need help getting in and out of bed, bathing, and managing his Medicat ion schedule, which is absolutely critical. The first 2 weeks are especially important." "We understand," Melanie said firmly. "Ray is our priority." As they wheeled me toward the exit the next morning, I spotted Melanie texting rapidly, her manicured nails clicking against her screen. Preston and Bailey huddled together, whispering. I blamed my unease on the Medicat ion. The first day home went smoothly. Melanie helped me to the hospital bed we'd rented for the downstairs guest room. Bailey brought my medications on schedule, and Preston helped me to the bathroom when needed. I drifted in and out of a painkiller haze, grateful for their support. I woke early the second morning to find Melanie packing a suitcase. "What's going on?" I asked, struggling to sit up. She jumped slightly. "Oh, you're awake. I was gonna talk to you about this at breakfast." She sat on the edge of the bed, not quite meeting my eyes. "There's been a slight change of plans." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What kind of change?" "You remember that Lake Tahoe trip we booked months ago? The one with the non-refundable deposit?" I stared at her. "The family vacation? You're still going?" Now she sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. "Ray, it's a 5-star resort. We'd lose thousands. Preston and Bailey have been looking forward to it all semester. But the doctor said." "I've got it all figured out," she interrupted. "Meals prepped in a fridge. Medications labeled by day and time. We'll only be gone 10 days, and you can call us any time." 10 days. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. "Melanie, I can barely get to the bathroom alone. We set everything up in reach, and I've asked Sonia to check on you." Sonia was our cleaning lady who came once a week. She was 65 years old, and barely spoke English. "You promised." My voice cracked embarrassingly. "All of you promised to help me." Melanie's face hardened slightly. "Don't make this difficult, Ray. We've been planning this forever." Preston and Bailey appeared in the doorway, already dressed for travel. "Dad, we're really sorry," Bailey said, looking genuinely conflicted. "But Mom says you'll be okay, and nothing changes the fact that we're going," Preston finished firmly. "The resort has that business networking event I told you about, remember? I can't miss that opportunity." I looked at my family, really looked at them, and saw strangers. These people who I'd sacrificed everything for couldn't sacrifice 10 days of vacation for me. "When do you leave?" I asked quietly. "Our flight's at noon," Melanie said, relief evident in her voice. "I've left detailed instructions on the kitchen counter." For hours later, they were gone. I lay in my bed, pain radiating through my body, and listened to the silence of my empty house. Chapter 2. Abandoned. Day 3 after surgery was when everything fell apart. The medication schedule became confused. Was it time for the high-dose painkiller or the anti-inflammatory? The type instructions Melanie left were unclear, and my mind was foggy from pain and previous doses. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with Preston and Bailey. I managed to drag myself to the kitchen, one excruciating step at a time, using the walker the hospital had provided. The prepped meals, Melanie promised, were just sandwich ingredients and 3 frozen dinners. The microwave was too high for me to safely use while balancing on my walker. By evening, hunger and pain had become twin torturers. I finally reached Melanie on the 5th try. "We're at dinner, Ray," she answered, sounding annoyed. The background noise told me they were at a restaurant, laughing, clinking glasses. "Can this wait?" "No, it can't," I said through gritted teeth. "I need help figuring out which Medicat I on." "Hold on," she interrupted. I heard her moving somewhere quieter. "What's the problem?" I labeled everything. "The instructions aren't clear, and I can barely move, Melanie. I haven't eaten since breakfast." A brief silence. "You're a grown man, Ray. Figure it out. I had major spinal surgery 3 days ago." My voice rose with disbelief. "The doctor said I needed help." "Don't guilt-trip me," she snapped. "We're on vacation, not your servants." The casual cruelty of her words stunned me into silence. In the background, I heard a male voice asking if everything was okay. The voice wasn't Preston's. "Who's that?" I asked softly. A pause. "Just the waiter," she said too quickly. "Look, I need to go. Follow the pill schedule as best you can. We'll call tomorrow." They didn't call tomorrow. Well, the next day, I survived on water from the bathroom sink and crackers I could reach from the bed. The pain became a living thing, clawing at my insides. On day 5, I dragged myself to my office down the hall, determined to call my doctor. My desk phone was dead. The line disconnected. My cell phone was nearly out of battery, and I couldn't find my charger. In desperation, I booted up my computer to email my doctor, and that's when everything changed. Melanie had left her email logged in. At first, I thought I was hallucinating from pain and Medicat ion. The email chain was between my wife and someone named Benjamin Walsh. The subject line: Tahoe getaway. "Can't wait to feel your body against mine with nothing. But the lake view as witness." Read one message from Miss Benjamin. "Ray's surgery was perfect timing," Melanie had replied. "The kids think it's just a family vacation. 10 days of freedom." My hands trembled as I kept reading. The affair had been going on for over a year. Benjamin Walsh was my business partner Neil Walsh's cousin, a fact that added another layer of betrayal. The emails revealed that Preston and Bailey knew about the affair. They didn't approve, but they'd agreed to participate in this family vacation because Benjamin had promised Preston introductions to investors and Bailey's summer internship at his marketing firm. I read every email, each word a knife. Then I noticed a notification for a shared photo album. With numb fingers I clicked it. There they were, my family and my wife's lover, posing in front of a luxury lake house. Melanie wrapped in Benjamin's arms. Preston shaking hands with men in expensive suits. Bailey lounging by a pool. All of them smiling, not a care in the world, while I lay neglected in agony. "Thanks for showing me who you really are," I whispered to the empty room. I managed one phone call before my cell died completely. Not to Melanie or my children, not even a Dr. Landry. I called Hugh Bannister, my oldest friend, and the only person who knew everything about me, including the darkness I kept buried. "Hugh," I said when he answered. "I need you." He arrived 6 hours later with supplies, medication, and cold fury in his eyes. "Jesus Christ, Ray," he said, taking in my unwashed body, the empty water glasses, the confusion of pills. "They left you like this." "They left me for dead," I corrected quietly. And now I'm going to return the favor. Chapter 3. The Decision. Hugh moved into my guest room for the next 2 weeks. A retired military medic turned private security consultant, he approached my recovery with tactical precision. He administered medications, changed bandages, helped me bathe, and cooked actual meals. More importantly, he listened as I poured out every bitter detail of my family's betrayal. "They've been laughing at me for God knows how long," I said one evening as we sat on the back patio. I was finally mobile enough to venture outside with a cane. My own children chose a stranger over their father because of what he could offer them. Hugh's weathered face remained impassive, but I knew he was furious on my behalf. We'd grown up together in the same hardscrabble neighborhood, had each other's backs through every fight and setback. He had been the best man in my wedding and godfather to both my children. "What are you thinking, Ray?" he asked carefully. He knew me well enough to see the cold calculation behind my pain. "I'm thinking it's time they learned what it feels like to be abandoned," I replied. "I've got 2 weeks before they return." "That's enough time." "For what?" I turned to him, decision crystallizing. "To disappear. Not just leave, disappear so completely they'll never find me unless I want to be found." Hugh nodded slowly. "You have the means." He was referring to what we'd always called my ghost protocol, a detailed escape plan I'd created years ago during a period of paranoia after my company's first major success. I'd established alternate identities, offshore accounts, and property holdings that couldn't be traced back to me. I never thought I'd use them against my own family. "They think I'm just a wallet with legs," I said bitterly. "A provider who can be discarded when inconvenient. They have no idea who I really am or what I'm capable of." "What about the company?" Hugh asked. "Neil can buy my shares. He's wanted it for years." My jaw tightened, though I'm gonna make sure he understands exactly what his cousin has done. Over the next few days, as my physical strength gradually returned, Hugh helped me set my plan in motion. We transferred funds, contacted my lawyer, and prepared documentation. I recorded videos on my phone documenting my condition and the abandoned state of the house. I forwarded the damning emails to secure accounts. By the time Melanie texted that they'd be home in 2 days, every trace of Raymond Delacroix, the devoted father and husband, was ready to vanish. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Hugh asked the night before their return. "Once you trigger this, there's no going back." I looked around at the house I'd built, filled with memories both good and bad. For 23 years I believed I was building a legacy of love. Now I understood I'd just been building a comfortable prison for myself. "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied. "They made their choice. Now I'm making mine." 2 days later, my family returned from Lake Tahoe to find an empty house. No trace of my hospital bed, medication, or personal belongings. Just a note on the kitchen counter that read, "I received your message loud and clear. Now you'll receive mine." The game had begun. Chapter 4, Ghost Protocol. The Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina offered perfect seclusion while I recovered and planned. Hugh on a cabin there, off-grid and untraceable. As summer heat gave way to fall coolness, I rebuilt my body through rigorous physical therapy and my mind through meticulous strategy. 42 messages from Bailey today, Hugh reported, checking the burner phone we used to monitor my family's desperate attempts at contact. Most of them variations on "please talk to us, we're begging." I continued my push-ups, face impassive. "And Melanie?" 28 calls, 15 texts. "She's threatening to file a missing persons report." I snorted. "Let her." I left a video with my lawyer explaining I'm leaving voluntarily. The police won't waste resources. According to our surveillance, my disappearance had thrown my family into chaos. Melanie had to explain to friends, neighbors, and business associates why her husband had vanished immediately after major surgery. The story she concocted that I was at a specialized rehabilitation facility was already unraveling. Preston had been forced to put his networking opportunities on hold to help manage the company in my absence. Bailey had returned to UCLA but was failing classes, distracted by the family drama. And Benjamin Walsh had mysteriously stepped back from the relationship, sensing complications. "They still think this is temporary," I said, toweling off sweat, "that I'm having a midlife crisis or tantrum. They expect me to come crawling back when I run out of money or resolve." Hugh raised an eyebrow. "And that's where they're wrong." "Catastrophically wrong," I agreed. "My plan required patience. While my family scrambled to maintain appearances, I was reconstructing myself. The beard I grown disguised my face. Daily mountain hikes had hardened my body beyond its pre-injury state. Even my voice had changed. I worked with a dialect coach online to adopt a slight southern drawl. Raymond Delacroix was disappearing. And in his place, Robert Dawson was emerging, a successful real estate investor with a background no one would question too deeply. 3 months after my disappearance, I was ready for phase 2. Hugh drove me to Charlotte, where I boarded a private plane to the Cayman Islands. There, I met with bankers who knew me only as Robert Dawson, activated financial instruments established years earlier, and set in motion the economic noose that would slowly tighten around my family's necks. "You're really gonna let them lose the house?" Hugh asked during our encrypted video call that evening. "I provided for them generously for decades," I replied coolly. "The house, the cars, the vacations, the education. All paid for by the man they abandoned without food or medication. They made their choice. And Neil Walsh, your business partner," my expression hardened. "I've sold him my shares at fair market value, but he's about to discover that his cousin's affair with my wife violated multiple morality clauses in our partnership agreement." "You're scorching the earth, Ray." "No," I corrected. "I'm just removing what was never actually theirs. They'll keep their clothes, personal items, and whatever they've saved independently. But everything I built, that's coming with me." By Christmas, 6 months after my disappearance, the effects were becoming clear. Melanie had been forced to sell her luxury car to cover mounting debts. Preston, unable to manage in my absence, had been sidelined at the company, as Neil brought in experienced management. Bailey had dropped out of UCLA, unable to afford tuition after the college fund I'd established mysteriously froze. Their text messages had evolved from angry demands to confused pleas to desperate bargaining. "Dad, please," Bailey wrote in her latest message. "Mom had to take a job at the mall. We might lose the house. Whatever we did, we're sorry. Just tell us what you want us to do." I didn't respond, but I took no pleasure in their suffering. This wasn't about punishment. It was about consequences. For the first time in their privileged lives, my wife and children were experiencing the harsh reality of betrayal. The reality I'd lived through in that empty house in pain and alone. In January, I returned to the United States, not to my former home, but to Denver, Colorado, where Robert Dawson purchased a penthouse apartment with sweeping mountain views. With my new identity firmly established, I began building a new real estate development company focusing on sustainable, affordable housing, the antithesis of the luxury properties my family had always expected. They hired a private investigator. Hugh informed me during his first visit to my new home. "Amateur hour. The guy's looking for Raymond Delacroix, not Robert Dawson." I nodded, gazing out at the snow-capped Rockies. "And Benjamin Walsh?" Hugh's mouth twitched in what might have been satisfaction. "Left town after his cousin's business took a nosedive. Apparently he's not interested in Melanie now that the money's gone." "Of course not," I said quietly. "He wanted what I built, not who she is." "The final pieces are in place," Hugh said. "Are you ready for the last phase?" I turned to face my oldest friend. "It's time for the Delacroix family to learn that actions have permanent consequences." Chapter 5. Visible Ghosts. Spring brought renewal to Denver, but final reckonings to my former family. On the anniversary of my surgery, a date etched in my memory by pain and betrayal, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. First came a certified letters from my attorney, delivered simultaneously to Melanie, Preston and Bailey at the modest apartment they now shared. The letters outlined in precise legal language exactly what they had lost and why. Melanie's divorce papers cited abandonment and adultery with copies of the incriminating emails attached. Her settlement, exactly what our prenuptial agreement specified for infidelity, nothing. Preston received documentation showing that his shares in Delacroix Construction had been legally forfeited when he breached his fiduciary duty by aiding in his mother's deception during my medical emergency. Bailey received notice that while her college trust had been frozen, it wasn't gone. It had been converted to a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, with the stipulation that she could never benefit from it. Each letter ended with the same statement: "Raymond Delacroix has moved forward with his life, and requests no further contact." That should be the end of it. I told Hugh during our weekly encrypted call. They know the truth now. They can accept it, and move on. Hugh's silence told me he disagreed. "What?" I demanded. "You know your family, Ray. This won't be the end." He was right. Within days, my lawyer reported that Melanie was contesting the divorce, claiming duress and abandonment on my part. Preston had consulted 3 different attorneys about challenging the share forfeiture. Bailey had shown up at the Scholarship Foundation's office, causing a scene. Their desperation wasn't surprising. In the months since my disappearance, their lives had unraveled completely. The house had been foreclosed on. Melanie's job at the mall hadn't lasted. Preston had been fully removed from the company after Neil Walsh discovered his complicity in covering up Melanie's affair with his cousin. Bailey was waiting tables at a diner instead of finishing her degree. They were experiencing exactly what I'd intended, the consequences of their choices. What I hadn't expected was Benjamin Walsh's reappearance in Melanie's life. My surveillance reported that he'd returned, supposedly to support her through this difficult time. In reality, he was after the one asset he believed she still had, potential claims to my fortune. It was time to become visible under my new identity as Robert Dawson. I arranged to purchase the building where Melanie worked. A routine staff meeting was called with a new owner scheduled to address employees. I arrived in an expensive suit, my beard now stylishly trimmed, hair slightly longer, and touched with distinguished gray. Melanie didn't recognize me at first. She sat in the back row, slumped with exhaustion in her retail uniform. Only when I began speaking, letting my cultivated accent slip slightly, did her head snap up. Our eyes met across the room, and I watched the blood drain from her face. As the new owner, I continued smoothly, ignoring her visible shock. I'll be making some changes to operations. Those who have demonstrated loyalty and work ethic will be rewarded. Those who haven't. I smiled thinly. Well, the market is competitive these days. After the meeting, I retreated to my office and waited. Within minutes, there was a frantic knock at the door. "Come in, Melanie," I called. She burst in trembling. "Ray, is it really you? Or have you? Why did you?" She moved toward me, arms outstretched. I held up a hand, stopping her. "That's not my name anymore, and you've lost the right to ask me anything." "Please," she begged, tears spilling. "You have to listen. I've lost everything. The kids are suffering, much like I suffered alone after surgery." I asked mildly. "When you were enjoying Lake Tahoe with your lover?" Her face crumpled. "It was a terrible mistake. I didn't think." "That's correct. You didn't think I would ever stand up for myself. You didn't think your comfortable life could disappear. You didn't think consequences would apply to you. Ray, Robert, whatever you're calling yourself," she whispered. "I'm still your wife." "Not for much longer," I replied. "And this meeting isn't about reconciliation. It's about clarity. I want you to understand exactly why your life has fallen apart. And I want you to explain it to our children." I slid a folder across the desk. Inside is documentation of everything. The emails, the photos from your vacation, the text messages between you and Benjamin planning how to leave me alone after surgery. I want Preston and Bailey to see who their mother really is. "They'll hate me," she whispered. Perhaps, I agreed. Or perhaps they'll recognize their own complicity. Either way, they deserve the truth. "And then what?" she asked. "After we've seen all this, what happens?" I leaned back in my chair. "Then nothing. Your life continues as it is. My life continues as Robert Dawson. The only difference is that illusions will be stripped away." "You can't mean that," she said desperately. "After 23 years, you can't just—" "Actually, I can. You taught me that, Melanie, when you said we're on vacation, not your servants. You taught me that decades of marriage mean nothing when convenience is at stake." I stood, indicating our meeting was over. "You have 48 hours to share those documents with Preston and Bailey. After that, I'll do it myself." "And Benjamin?" she asked quietly. I smiled coldly. "Mr. Walsh is about to have his own reckoning." Chapter 6, Web of Consequences. Benjamin Walsh lived in a glass and steel downtown loft that screamed new money. Exactly the type of flashy, substanceless dwelling that would appeal to a man who pursued married women and leveraged family connections for business advantage. I studied his habits for a week before making my move. Every morning he left his building at precisely 7:15 a.m., walked to a local coffee shop, then took his BMW to his office. His predictability made him vulnerable. On a crisp Monday morning, I waited in the coffee shop, newspaper raised to obscure my face. When Benjamin entered, I watched him order his usual complicated espresso drink. Then followed him to the sugar station. "Excuse me," I said, deliberately bumping into him and causing him to spill his drink. "Hey, watch it," he snapped, then froze as recognition dawned. "Delacroix, let's talk outside," I said quietly. "Unless you prefer, I make a scene about how you slept with my wife while I was recovering from surgery." His face paled, and he followed me to a secluded bench in a nearby park. "How did you find me?" he asked, visibly nervous. Finding people is easy when you have resources, I replied. And despite your best efforts with my wife, I still have considerable resources. Look, whatever happened between Melanie and me, was a conspiracy to abandon an injured man? I finished. Don't pretend it was a love story, Benjamin. We both know you were after my connections, my lifestyle. You wanted what I built. He swallowed hard. What do you want from me? Money? I don't have much left since Neil's company. I'm well aware of your financial situation, I interrupted. After all, I engineered it. His eyes widened. You? But how? The same way I'm going to engineer what happens next if you don't follow my instructions exactly. I handed him an envelope. Inside are plane tickets to Phoenix and information on a job opportunity. Your qualifications have been slightly enhanced to ensure you get the position. You want me to move to Arizona? He asked incredulously. I want you out of my family's life permanently, I corrected. The job is legitimate. The apartment is paid for 6 months. Considered a fresh start. One you don't deserve, but I'm providing anyway. And if I refuse? I smiled thinly. Then the evidence of how you manipulated my children with false promises while sleeping with their mother gets sent to every business contact in your phone. The documentation of your involvement in my abandonment goes to the police to explore potential criminal negligence. And the records of your previous affairs, yes, I know about those too, go to the women's husbands. Benjamin stared at me, hatred and fear warring in his expression. You're insane. No, I replied calmly. I'm thorough. You have 48 hours to accept the job and be on that plane. After that, the consequences begin. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. If you contact Melanie or my children ever again, even to say goodbye, all the evidence drops immediately. Am I clear? He nodded mutely. Good. Enjoy Phoenix, Mr. Walsh. I hear the dry heat is good for people with character deficiencies. That evening, I met Preston at his cramped one-bedroom apartment. Unlike his mother, he recognized me immediately when I knocked on his door. Dad, he whispered, looking like he'd seen a ghost. You're alive. Disappointed? I asked, stepping past him into the apartment. No. God, no. We've been looking everywhere for you. Why did you? His voice broke. Why did you destroy everything? The company, our home, my future. I surveyed his living space, a far cry from the luxury he'd grown up with. I didn't destroy anything, Preston. I simply took back what was mine. But did you read the documents your mother received? I interrupted. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. The emails, the arrangements for the trip. You knew about her affair with Benjamin Walsh before we even left for the hospital, didn't you? His silence was answer enough. You chose a business networking opportunity over your father's health and safety, I continued. You chose Benjamin's empty promises over your obligations to the man who gave you everything. I thought you'd be okay, he mumbled. Mom said. Your mother lied. I cut in, and you chose to believe her because it was convenient. Because a luxury vacation and career opportunities mattered more than basic human decency. Preston sank onto his worn couch, head in his hands. So this is punishment, taking everything away. This is reality, I corrected. You're experiencing the natural consequence of your choices. For the first time in your life, you're not being protected from your own actions. What do you want from me? He asked, looking up with reddened eyes. Nothing, I replied simply. I want nothing from you, Preston. Not a relationship. Not forgiveness. Not understanding. I simply wanted you to see me one last time and know exactly why things happened as they did. That's it. You're just gonna disappear again. I moved toward the door. Raymond Delacroix disappeared a year ago. I'm Robert Dawson now, and Robert has no children. Dad, please. He begged, rising. We can fix this. I'll do anything. I paused at the door. That's the final lesson, Preston. Some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals can't be undone. The last visit was to Bailey at the diner where she worked. I sat in her section, menu raised, watching her hurry between tables. Her face was thinner. Her movements hurried. When she finally approached my table, she didn't look up from her notepad. What can I get you today? She asked mechanically. The truth would be nice, I replied to my natural voice. Her head snapped up, eyes widening in shock. Dad, she whispered, nearly dropping her notepad. I gestured to the empty seat across from me. Sit down, Bailey. She glanced nervously at her manager, then slid into the booth. Where have you been? Why did I leave? I finished. Or why I take back everything I provided. The answer to both is in the documents your mother should have shared with you. Tears filled her eyes. She showed us the emails, the photos, everything. But Dad, I didn't know how bad it was when we left. I swear I thought you'd be okay. You chose a poolside vacation over helping your father recover from spinal surgery, I said evenly. You chose Benjamin Walsh's empty internship promises over basic human decency. I was wrong, she admitted, a tear sliding down her cheek. We were all wrong. But does that mean you have to destroy our lives completely? I had to drop out of UCLA. Mom can barely afford rent. Preston is experiencing the natural consequences of his choices. I finished, as are you, as is your mother. So that's it. No forgiveness. No second chances. I studied my daughter, seeing both the woman she'd become, and the little girl who once sat on my shoulders at construction sites, proudly watching her daddy build things. Forgiveness requires remorse, Bailey. Not remorse for getting caught or facing consequences. Real remorse for the harm caused. I have yet to hear anyone in this family express that. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for leaving you alone when you needed us. For choosing a vacation over helping you. For everything. For a moment, something cracked in my resolve. A hairline fracture in the wall I'd built around my heart. Then I remembered lying on the floor in agony, unable to reach food or medication, while my daughter posed for Instagram photos with my wife's lover. I believe that you think you're sorry, I said finally. But true remorse changes behavior, not just words. You had 19 years of my unconditional love and support. You threw it away in a moment when it became inconvenient. I stood leaving money for a tip that would exceed her entire day's earnings. Goodbye, Bailey. I wish you well in the life you've chosen. Her hand shot out, grabbing mine. Will we ever see you again? I gently removed her fingers from my wrist. Raymond Delacroix is gone. Robert Dawson has no daughter. As I walked away, I heard her call after me. We still love you, Dad. I didn't look back. Love without loyalty is just another empty promise. And I'd had enough of those to last a lifetime. Chapter 7. Phoenix Rising. 1 year to the day after my family abandoned me, I stood on the balcony of my Denver penthouse, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Robert Dawson's real estate development company had flourished, specializing in affordable, sustainable housing that was the antithesis of the luxury properties my former family had taken for granted. My phone buzzed. Hugh calling with his weekly update. They're still looking for you, he reported without preamble. Melanie hired another private investigator, but they're still searching for Raymond Delacroix, not Robert Dawson. And Benjamin Walsh took the Arizona job. Smart move on his part. I nodded, though Hugh couldn't see me. Benjamin had recognized that crossing me would be catastrophic. In his own way, he'd shown more sense than my own family. Any change with Preston or Bailey? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Hugh paused. Preston's working construction now. Entry level with a commercial outfit in Charlotte. Bailey's back in school, community college, working 2 jobs to pay for it. Something tightened in my chest. Despite everything, hearing that my children were rebuilding their lives stirred complicated emotions. Ray, Hugh said carefully. It's been a year. You made your point. They've suffered the consequences. Maybe it's time to... To what? I interrupted sharply. Forgive and forget? Welcome them back with open arms? They left me to suffer alone, Hugh. They chose luxury and convenience over basic human decency. I'm not saying forgive them, Hugh replied. I'm saying maybe it's time to stop actively monitoring them, to truly move forward as Robert Dawson. I fell silent, considering his words. Was I truly moving forward if I remained tethered to their lives, even as an observer? I'll think about it, I finally said. But first, there's one more thing I need to do. That evening, I attended a charity gala for affordable housing initiatives in Denver. As one of the major donors, Robert Dawson was expected to make an appearance. What no one expected was for Neil Walsh to also be in attendance. I spotted him across the ballroom, grayer and more weathered than when I'd last seen him. Our eyes met, and recognition dawned on his face. Not of Raymond Delacroix, but of a mysterious investor who had systematically dismantled portions of his business over the past year. He approached cautiously, drink in hand. Robert Dawson, I presume your reputation precedes you, as does yours, Mr. Walsh, I replied coolly. Though I understand your company has faced challenges recently. His jaw tightened. Nothing we can't overcome. Business has cycles. Indeed it does. Much like loyalty and betrayal. Confusion crossed his features. then slowly transformed into dawning horror as he studied my face more carefully. "My God," he whispered. "Ray." I smiled thinly. "That name no longer applies to me. But I'm curious. How much did you know about your cousin's relationship with my wife while I was recovering from surgery?" Neil paled visibly. "I swear I had no idea until after you disappeared. When I found out, I cut ties with Benjamin immediately, yet you benefited from my absence," I noted. "Acquire my shares at market value, took full control of the company." "That was business, not personal," he protested. "I thought you'd abandoned everything." "I abandoned nothing," I corrected. "I reclaimed what was mine, and removed myself from people who had proven unworthy of trust." Neil glanced around nervously. "What do you want from me? Is this some kind of blackmail?" I laughed softly. "No, Neil. I have everything I want already. This conversation is merely closure. A courtesy to inform you that Robert Dawson's investment group will no longer be targeting your holdings." Relief washed over his face. "You are backing off?" "I've made my point," I replied. "Your business will survive, though perhaps never return to its former glory. Consider it the cost of associating with people who lack basic decency." "And my cousin," he asked hesitantly, "is enjoying a new life in Phoenix. I suggest you let him remain there undisturbed." As I turned to leave, Neil caught my arm. "Ray, Robert, whatever you're calling yourself now, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened to you. No one deserves that kind of betrayal." I regarded him silently for a moment. "You're right, Neil. No one deserves that kind of betrayal. Remember that the next time you're tempted to look the other way for family's sake." Walking away, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The last business connection to my old life had been addressed. Robert Dawson was truly free to exist without Raymond Delacroix's shadows. That night, I called Hugh. "You're right," I said when he answered. "It's time to stop monitoring them. Whatever they do now is their own path." Hugh's relief was palpable. "I think that's wise, Ray. You've built something good as Robert. Don't let the past poison it. There's just one more thing," I added. "I want you to arrange a trust for Bailey's education. Anonymous. Enough to cover community college and transfer to a state university if she maintains her grades. She's working hard to rebuild. I won't stand in the way of that." "And Preston? Melanie?" "Nothing," I said firmly. "Preston chose his path with open eyes, and Melanie made her choice long ago." "You're a complicated man, my friend," Hugh said quietly. "No," I corrected. "Just a man who understands that not all betrayals are equal." Chapter 8. Confrontations. 3 days after my conversation with Neil Walsh, as I was leaving my office in downtown Denver, a familiar figure stepped out of the shadows of the parking garage. "Hello, Robert," Melanie said, using my new name deliberately. "Or do you still answer to Ray when no one's around?" I kept my expression neutral, though inwardly, I was calculating how she'd found me. Neil Walsh was the obvious answer. "Melanie," I acknowledged. "You're a long way from home." She looked different, thinner with stress lines around her eyes and cheaper clothes than she'd been accustomed to. But her spine was straight, her gaze direct. "Home," she laughed bitterly. "You took our home. You took everything." "I took back what was mine," I corrected. "What you forfeited when you chose a luxury vacation with your lover over basic human decency." She flinched, but didn't back down. "I've a year to think about what happened, to recognize my mistakes and live with the consequences. But this vendetta goes beyond justice, Ray. This is cruelty." "Cruelty?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like leaving a man who just had spinal surgery alone without proper food or Medicat ion. That kind of cruelty." "I was wrong," she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "Terribly, unforgivably wrong. What I did was selfish and callous, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. Yet, here you are seeking what? Forgiveness? Restoration? Money? Closure," she said simply. And to deliver these, she held out a manila envelope. When I made no move to take it, she placed it on the hood of my car. "Letters from Preston and Bailey," she explained. "Things they need to say to you, whether you want to hear them or not." "And from you?" I asked coldly. "I've sent my piece to your face. I wasn't a good wife, Ray. Even before everything, I took you for granted. Resented your work hours while enjoying the lifestyle they provided. When Benjamin showed interest, it fed something in me that I should have addressed honestly with you instead." Her candor was unexpected. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I'd once loved, direct, unflinching. "That doesn't excuse what you did," I said. Nothing excuses what I did, she agreed. But I want you to know that while you've been systematically destroying our lives, I've been recognizing how I destroyed something precious long before you disappeared. She turned to leave, then paused. The divorce papers, I've signed them. They're in there too. You win, Ray. You're free. I've been free for a year, I replied. She looked back, eyes glistening. Have you? Because the man I married, for all his flaws and mine, wasn't cruel. He was tough, demanding, sometimes distant, but never cruel. This elaborate punishment scheme. This isn't freedom. It's a prison of your own making. After she left, I sat in my car for a long time, the envelope untouched beside me. Finally I opened it. Inside were 3 letters. One for Melanie, despite what she'd said, and one each from Preston and Bailey. I read them in the silent car, each word landing like a stone in still water. Preston wrote of shame and regret, of the hard lessons learned working with his hands after a lifetime of privilege, of understanding finally the value of what I'd built in the depth of his betrayal. Bailey wrote of her struggle to rebuild, of working 2 jobs while studying, of nightmares where she returned to an empty house to find me gone. She wrote of love that persisted despite everything. In Melanie, her letter was the shortest and most devastating. I didn't love him, she wrote. I loved the reflection of myself in his eyes. Younger, desired, unencumbered by responsibility. It was never about him, but about escaping who I'd become and destroying our family. I've been forced to face that woman in the mirror without illusions. I don't ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I ask only that you don't punish our children for my failures. They were following my lead as they always had. Direct your justified rage at me alone. I drove home in silence, the letters burning a hole in my pocket. For the first time in a year, the righteousness of my revenge fell hollow. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. Dad, it's Bailey. Mom told us she found you. I don't expect forgiveness or money or anything. I just want you to know that I understand now what real consequences are. And I'm trying to be someone you could be proud of even if you never know it. I didn't respond, but I didn't block the number either. 3 days later, Preston appeared in my office building. Security called up, and against my better judgment, I agreed to see him. He entered cautiously, taking in the vast windows and modern furniture of Robert Dawson's domain. The past year had changed him. The pampered boy was gone, replaced by a man with calloused hands and a humbler bearing. I won't take much of your time, he began. I just needed to see you once, face to face, to say I'm sorry. Not for getting caught or facing consequences. The choice I made for valuing opportunity over loyalty. For failing as a son when you needed me most. I studied him silently, noting the construction dust on his boots, the simplicity of his clothes. You're working in the industry, I observed. He nodded. Started as a laborer. Learning from the ground up the way you did. It's harder than I ever imagined. Makes me realize how much I took for granted. What do you want from me, Preston? Nothing, he said, meeting my gaze directly. I came to give, not take. To offer an apology that you deserve, whether you accept it or not. Something shifted in me. A tectonic movement of emotion long suppressed. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the first tremor that might eventually lead there. You were following a mother's lead? I said finally. No. He countered firmly. I was a grown man making my own choice. I chose wrong. That's on me, not her. His willingness to take full responsibility surprised me. It was unexpected maturity. Is there anything else? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. I thought you might want this back. I've been carrying it since we had to pack up the house. It was a picture from 20 years ago. Preston at age 2 on my shoulders at a construction site. Both of us wearing hard hats, his tiny hands gripping my forehead, both of us laughing. Keep it, I said, pushing down a surge of emotion. It belongs to your past, not mine. Our past, he corrected quietly. Whatever happens now, that moment was real. After he left, I stood at my window for a long time looking out at the Denver skyline, but seeing only ghosts of what had been and what might have been. That evening, I called Hugh. They found me. I said without preamble. I know, he replied. Neil Walsh figured out after your conversation at the gala. He told Melanie, you knew and didn't warn me? Hugh sighed. Maybe it was time, Ray. Maybe this confrontation needed to happen for all of you to move forward. I'll move forward, I insisted. Robert Dawson has no past to reconcile. Bullshit, Hugh said bluntly. Raymond Delacroix is still in there, carrying all that pain and rage. Until you face it head on, Robert Dawson is just a mask. His words stung because they contained truth I wasn't ready to acknowledge. I ended the call without responding. That night, I dreamed of the hospital room after my surgery, but in the dream my family stayed. They helped me heal, supported me, showed the love I believed in for decades. I woke with tears on my face and fury in my heart. Not at them, but at myself for still carrying the wounds so deeply. Chapter 9. Final Reckonings. 2 weeks after the confrontations with my former family, I stood in the boardroom of my company, finalizing plans for our most ambitious project yet. A mixed-use development that would provide affordable housing, community spaces and small business opportunities in a neglected part of Denver. The Robert Dawson Foundation will contribute 30% of the funding, I told my executive team. The rest will come from our investment partners and municipal bonds. This could transform the neighborhood, my lead architect commented, studying the plans. It's exactly the kind of project that defines who we are as a company, who we are. The phrase echoed in my mind as the meeting concluded. Robert Dawson had built something meaningful from the ashes of Raymond Delacroix's life, something perhaps more valuable than what had been lost. As I returned to my office, my assistant intercepted me. "Sir, there's a young woman waiting to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's very insistent. Says her name is Bailey." I paused, conflicting emotions warring within me. "How long has she been waiting?" "Nearly 3 hours," my assistant replied. "I told her you were in meetings all day, but she said she'd wait as long as necessary." After a moment consideration, I nodded. "Sent her in." Bailey entered cautiously, her eyes taking in the office before settling on me. She looked both familiar and like a stranger, my daughter. And yet not my daughter. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, remaining standing even when I gestured to a chair. "I'll be brief. What can I do for you?" I asked, maintaining Robert Dawson's slight southern drawl. She smiled faintly. "You don't have to keep up the accent with me, but I understand if it helps maintain the distance you need." I switched back to my natural voice. "Why are you here, Bailey?" "To thank you," she said simply. "The anonymous trust for my education. I know it was you." I stiffened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," she replied gently. "The timing, the conditions, the amounts, they're too specific to be coincidence. And though you want to hate us, you still care enough to make sure I can finish school if you came for more." "I didn't," she interrupted. "I came to show you this." She placed a document on my desk, her grades from community college, straight A's across the board. "I'm transferring to Colorado State in the fall," she continued. "Not because it's prestigious or expensive, but because they have an excellent social work program. I want to help people who've been abandoned or betrayed by those they trusted. I've learned something about that perspective." I studied her face, searching for manipulation or deception, but found only earnest determination. "Why social work?" I asked despite myself. "You always wanted marketing, fashion, glamorous things." "I wanted those things because they seemed easy and fun," she admitted. "Now I want work that matters, that helps fix broken things. Maybe because I couldn't fix our family." Something caught in my throat. "Some things can't be fixed, Bailey." "I know," she said softly. "But they can be acknowledged. The pain can be honored rather than ignored. That's what I'm learning to do." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Mom and Preston don't know I'm here. This was just between you and me. A thank you, not an attempt to change your mind or heart. Those belong to you alone." After she left, I sat motionless, staring at her transcript on my desk. The straight A's represented more than academic achievement. They were evidence of a transformation, a consequence of consequences. That evening, I met Hugh for dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the city lights. "Bailey came to see me today," I told him after we'd ordered. "She knew about the education trust." Hugh nodded. "Smart girl. Always was. She's studying social work now. Wants to help people who've been abandoned." "Interesting choice," Hugh observed neutrally. I toyed with my water glass. "She thanked me, Hugh. No begging. No manipulation. Just gratitude." "And how did that make you feel?" I shot him an irritated glance. "Don't play therapist with me." "Not playing anything," he replied. "Just asking a question friend to friend." I sighed, considering the truth of his question. It made me feel seen, like someone finally understood that this wasn't just about revenge or punishment. It was about justice, consequences, and has justice been served? Hugh asked quietly. Has enough pain been inflicted to balance the scales? That's not fair, I protested. Isn't it? You crafted an elaborate plan to make them suffer as you suffered. They've lost their home, their status, their comfort. Melanie lost her husband and reputation. Preston lost his inheritance and position. They spent a year paying for 10 days of cruelty and selfishness. At what point is the debt paid? I stared out at the city lights, considering his words. You think I should forgive them? I think, Hugh said carefully, that Robert Dawson has built something valuable and meaningful. Something that could be his legacy instead of his hiding place. I think holding on to Raymond Delacroix's pain serves no one, least of all you. And what would forgiveness even look like? I asked. Genuinely uncertain. Welcome them back into my life? Pretend nothing happened. Hugh shook his head. Forgiveness doesn't mean restoration, Ray. It means releasing the active desire to see them suffer. It means allowing them and yourself to move forward without the weight of the past dictating every step. Later that night, standing on my penthouse balcony, I made a decision. Not about forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, but about ending the active pursuit of retribution. About allowing natural consequences to unfold without my hand continually tipping the scales. The next morning, I call my lawyer. I want to establish 3 trusts, I instructed. One for Melanie Delacroix, one for Preston Delacroix, and one to formalize the existing arrangement for Bailey Delacroix. Generous ones, I assume? He asked, knowing my resources. Adequate, I corrected. Enough for Melanie to establish a modest home and living. Enough for Preston to finish his education if he chooses. Bailey's remains for her education only. And the conditions? No contact requirements. No public acknowledgements. They receive quarterly payments regardless of their behavior toward me. That's unexpectedly unconditional, my lawyer observed. May I ask what prompted this change? I thought about Bailey's transcript, Preston's calloused hands, Melanie's direct gaze as she owned her mistakes without excuses. Justice has been served, I said simply. Continuing to pursue, it becomes something else entirely. Vengeance, he supplied. Precisely. And Robert Dawson isn't defined by vengeance. 3 days later, as I was preparing to leave for a business trip to Seattle, my security team alerted me to a visitor in the lobby, Preston. Sent him up? I decided after a moment's consideration. When he entered my penthouse, he carried a toolbox and wore work clothes. Your assistant mentioned you had some cabinets that needed repair, he said by way of greeting. I'm between jobs this week. I stared at him nonplussed. You came to fix my cabinets. He shrugged. I came to offer something I'm actually qualified to give, not money or status or connections, just skilled labor. The gesture, practical, humble, entirely unexpected, caught me off guard. The kitchen cabinet doors do stick, I admitted. Preston nodded and moved to the kitchen, setting down his toolbox and examining the hinges with professional focus. I watched him work skillfully, methodically, without complaint or expectation. You've learned, I observed. Starting from zero will do that, he replied without looking up. When everything's taken away, you figure out what you can actually build with your own 2 hands. As he finished adjusting the final hinge, testing the door's smooth swing, he added, Mom got notification of the trust you established. She cried for hours. It's not forgiveness, I said quickly. It's just mercy. Preston finished. We don't deserve it. We know that. He packed his tools with careful precision. The cabinets should work properly now. If they give you any more trouble, call me. No charge. It's the least I can do. After he left, I ran my hand over the smooth operation of the cabinet doors, thinking about things broken and things repaired, about mercy that wasn't forgiveness, but might someday lead there. That night, I received a text message from Melanie. Thank you for the trust. I don't deserve your kindness after my cruelty. The money will help establish a stable home, but the gesture itself means more. That perhaps someday, not now, but someday, there might be peace between us. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete the message either. 6 months later, I attended the groundbreaking ceremony for the Robert Dawson Foundation's affordable housing development. As I prepared to address the gathered crowd and press, I spotted 3 figures standing at the back, Melanie, Preston and Bailey, watching quietly, making no attempt to approach or be acknowledged. Hugh appeared at my side. They asked me if they could come. Said they wanted to witness something good you were building even if they couldn't be part of it. I nodded slowly, processing the complexity of emotions their presence evoked. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of something that wasn't defined by pain. They can stay, I said finally, As long as I understand that Raymond Delacroix died a year and a half ago. I'm Robert Dawson now. You study me carefully. And who exactly is Robert Dawson? Beyond the name and the accent, I looked out at the development site, the symbolic first shovel waiting to break ground on something new and hopeful. He's a man who builds things, I replied. Things that last. Things with purpose. And he doesn't define himself by what was taken from him, but by what he chooses to create. As I moved toward the podium, I felt the weight of their gazes but didn't look back. The past remained where it belonged, behind me. The future, with all its possibilities and uncertainties, laying the foundations we were about to lay. I had survived betrayal, enacted justice, and now stood at the threshold of something new. Not forgiveness perhaps, but freedom. Freedom from the need for revenge. Freedom to build rather than destroy. Freedom to move forward, without the constant weight of looking back. In the end, that was the most ruthless revenge of all. Not destroying my betrayers, but removing their power to define my future. Not forgetting what they had done, but refusing to be limited by it. And as I broke ground on the new development, I silently acknowledged what Raymond Delacroix had never understood but Robert Dawson had learned through fire. True power lies not in what we can take from others, but in what we choose to build for ourselves. And there you have it. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.
After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. **